Hi everyone, this is Skullshirtical TCG and welcome to, well, a rather fun video that I decided to make. As not many of you know, but I am a freaking big fan of Kerbal Space Program. Kerbal Space Program is basically a realistic space physics simulator game that involves these little green men, as you can see on the bottom right of the screen, called Kerbals. And the game focuses on you building spacecraft to send Kerbals to all sorts of places in a solar system that's very similar to ours. As you can see here, I am on the planet that, well, is pretty close to Earth. It's called Kerbal, and this is a ship that I built that will take me to the Kerbal's moon, and that is spelled M-U-N, not M-O-O-N. So, this is just me trying to get the thing up into orbit, first of all. But yeah, I've been a fan of space exploration all my life, and you might hear some static here as I move the microphone. And I just really love looking at the manned spaceflight exploration of the solar system. I am a huge fan of everything that the United States and Russia and Europe and basically all the world has done in advancement of space exploration, and Kerbal Space Program is a great way for you to simulate these kinds of missions on your own. It's extremely realistic, everything is scaled down, but the atmospheres work pretty well, the orbital mechanics work extremely well, everything is just really fun. But anyway, so we're about to get into the first staging of the rockets, the solid rocket boosters, the big white ones in the middle there, just cut out and are about to fall away. There they go. Oh, that's not good. Yes, unfortunately they managed to hit quite a few things on the rest of the spacecraft as it was going up, so looks like I've got to go back to the drawing board and start again. This version has itty-bitty rockets on the sides of those solid rocket boosters called Sepatrons that are meant to push the rockets far away from the rest of the spacecraft, but that didn't work. Luckily, I installed a abort option on this spacecraft. It's called a launch abort system, and this is a real thing that happens on real spacecraft. It's only ever been used once on the Soyuz, I believe, 18A mission. It was never used on American space flights, but it is designed to give the manned spacecraft a little bit of a jolt to pull it away from the rest of the rockets so it can be safe and sound as the rest of the rockets explode. Anyway, I finally got a version that worked. As you can see there, they exploded a little bit as they fell away, but upon some visual inspection of the craft, I realized that the only thing that it had taken away was one of my solar panels. I could easily complete the mission on another one, so I decided to continue with this mission. Now, as I said, I love space exploration. I know quite a bit about it. I knew a lot about it even before this game came out. For example, did you know in order to go faster in an orbit around Earth, you have to actually slow down? I bet that's something that a lot of you didn't realize, but it has to do with orbital mechanics. When you slow down, you make a tighter circle around the Earth, and thus you're able to circle around the Earth much quicker. Anyway, right here I'm just making some modifications to my thrust and stuff in order to get into a parking orbit around the planet, and after that it's just a matter of plotting a course to the moon and firing my rockets at the correct time and heading there. And I fired this in such a way that my rockets would burn out almost exactly when I would be on a collision course with the moon. Now obviously I don't want to collide with the moon with my Kerbals, but I want the rest of my rockets to collide in the moon for one very specific purpose. I don't want to litter space, quite literally, with all of my extra useless junk. I want for these things to hit the moon so that they're not in space at any time for me to potentially hit later. This is a real thing. It's called the Kessler Syndrome, and it was very well played. It was very well simulated in the film Gravity, if any of you saw that, the 2013 film that won the Academy Award for Best Director. It was just a very good film, and I highly recommend you guys see it. Anyway, so now I'm on the way to the moon. And there's a whole lot of technical mumbo-jumbo, but in reality, the game is very easy to pick up and very fun to play. There's a free demo of this available for PC, and the developer of Kerbal Space Program just announced that the game will be coming to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and for those of you who know me, I am most excited for a port to the Wii U. And you can be sure that I will be playing this a lot when it comes to the Wii U. For now, this is just me playing it on my computer, and most of this is at 4 times regular speed. Anyway, so now I have the bulk of my spacecraft, the core of my spacecraft, ready to go to the moon, and I just have the tiniest of boosters there at the bottom that I'm working on getting the rest of my spacecraft into a course that'll bring it close to the moon, but not onto the moon, because I don't want to crash into the moon. That's not what I want to do. I want to soft land on the moon, and in order to do that, the easiest way is to get into a nice tight orbit around the moon, and then from there just kill all of my lateral velocity, meaning kill all of my speed going sideways, and just drop to the surface. This is how they really landed on the moon back in the 1960s and 1970s with the Apollo missions. Apollos 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17 all successfully landed on the moon, and Apollos 8, 10, and 13 went to the moon, flew around it, and then came back to Earth without landing. So in total, 24 men have been to the moon, and 12 have walked on its surface, and it's just a little scary to think about. More people have come inside my house than have walked on the surface of the moon, but that's just something to think about. Anyway, so now, this is just a little something fun that I decided to do. For the sake of this video, I decided to make an Apollo-style spacecraft, meaning I would have one part of the craft that would remain in orbit around the moon with a Kerbal inside, and then I would have another spacecraft that would go down to the moon's surface with 2 Kerbals inside. And this is how it really happened. When Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon, he had his pilot who was with him, Buzz Aldrin, and while they were walking around on the moon, Michael Collins was in a spaceship orbiting the moon about 60 miles above them. And this is what they did for every single Apollo mission. They just found out that that was the most efficient way to send people to the moon. Just have a tiny spacecraft that you drop down on the moon and then boost it back up into orbit, and then use the rest of the spacecraft to get to the moon and then come home. Anyway, so now I have my Mooncraft configuration all figured out. I had to decouple them and then turn them both around and couple them by the noses so that I could use both of their individual boosters. And now I'm in an orbit around the moon. And from here on is just a case of tightening the orbit in order to make it as close to the moon as possible. So now that I'm in orbit around the moon, it is time to undock, leave the orbiter in orbit, and bring my 2 Kerbals down to the surface of the moon. And I have done this so many times it's second nature to me. But this is the first time that I'm doing it for you, so I'm just basically I've just fast forwarded through all of this, and I'm not really going to bore you with all the technical mumbo jumbo of what I'm doing. Really, there's a YouTuber who does this and does this probably much better than I could ever hope to. If you just look up Scott Manley, then it's spelled exactly as it sounds. He does great Kerbal Space Program videos. I highly recommend you check his videos out. He does the most incredible things, and yeah, I mean, he really knows his stuff. I mostly figured out most of my stuff either through watching his videos or trial and error. When I say I know a lot about orbital mechanics, knowing stuff and actually being able to practically put it to use are not the same thing. Anyway, so here I am flying above the Mooner Mountains. This is the moon, not the moon, so this is the Mooner, not the lunar. Makes sense, right? Anyway, so now I need to just find a nice flat area to land on. That looks good. And I put on a very, very puny engine, a lot punier than I thought. I thought I would slow down much faster than I am. I'm getting a little worried that I'm going to hit that crater up ahead, so I'm trying to maybe boost myself up a little bit. Anyway, so yeah, like I was saying earlier, I know a ton of stuff about all this, and I'm a huge fan of space exploration. I actually did want to be an astronaut at one point. That's not going to happen. But yeah, that just shows you how I mean, I'm not saying I wanted to be an astronaut like when I was a 5-year-old or anything. I wanted to be one even when I started college. It just didn't work out, like I said. Anyway, right there I managed to finally kill all of my horizontal velocity, but now I needed to come back here to the planal areas, try and find a nice flat place. Now we're back into real speed as I try and land this thing, and I notice, oh, my shadow, it's right there. It's like right under me. What am I supposed to do? I just try throwing this thing onto its bottom, and I completely fail. Time for a reload. So here we are trying again. This time I decided to also use the little RCS engines there. The RCS are basically, they're meant to control your attitude, not necessarily control your speed. They're meant to control which direction you point. But I used them and what little thrust they do provide to help slow down that much faster, and I managed to come down on a nice soft landing on the moon. And this is not at all what the Apollo astronauts did. I am on the far side of the moon. I am on the side of the moon that is facing away from the planet Kerbal. The Apollo astronauts always landed on the side of the moon that faces Earth. You know, one side of the moon always faces Earth. The moon does rotate, but it rotates at the same speed that it orbits around the Earth. So one side is always facing it. So let's put down a plaque worth remembering. You could probably pause the video there and see what I had to say for you guys. Then let's just hop back into our capsule and wait for the orbiter to come back around so we can boost back up, rendezvous, dock with it, and go back home. So yeah, I mean, I just love space exploration. There's just something about it that just appeals to me more than almost anything else. And that's part of the reason why I made this video, is I know that most of you guys don't even know what this game is. You don't know what anything is that I'm talking about. I seriously doubt that most of my fans will even watch this video. I doubt it'll get 1,000 views. But this is something that interests me a lot. And here you can just see me working through rendezvous and all sorts of stuff that I know about and I'm not expecting you guys to know about. So I'll just keep talking about random stuff. But yeah, I just love space exploration. I could easily name every single astronaut from every single space mission up until the first few space shuttle missions. And even then, I could probably name quite a few of those too. The very first shuttle mission was John Young and Robert Crippen. It launched on April 12, 1981. And John Young was asked if he was nervous, and he replied, "No, should I have been?" Anyway, so from here on out, it's a standard rendezvous, and like I said, it's probably too complex for most of you guys to understand. So I've cut out most of that, just ditching the bottom stage there, and now I am coming in for my rendezvous, and you should see us docking. There we go, we have docked, and unfortunately the game doesn't allow for you to transfer Kerbals between two docking ports. Anyway, we see a beautiful Earthrise as we begin our engine burn to get back home, and now we are, I've just fast forwarded to us right above Kerbal. I'm ditching the fuel and I am ditching the lunar module, and it's now time to just go through re-entry and come home. Now the thing with re-entry is you don't want to go too deep, because then, well, in real life you would burn up. In Kerbal Space Program, with the settings that I have on it, I've done an easy mode instead of normal mode. Basically, the atmosphere is not going to let me burn up. But I run the very real risk of not slowing down fast enough to safely deploy my parachutes. If I go too shallow, then I will skip off the atmosphere, which could mean you either don't come back at all, or it takes you a really, really long time to come back for another pass and get into the atmosphere again. And this is a real thing that the astronauts on Apollo had to deal with as well. The re-entry corridor from the moon was, if it was the equivalent of the Earth being the size of a basketball, the re-entry corridor was about the thickness of a sheet of paper. It was really, really thin. But luckily in Kerbal Space Program, it is very forgiving. I make it through the atmosphere, just trying to orient myself to get the best resistance. Going to fall through the clouds, which is actually a mod, it's not actually part of the game itself, and deploy my parachutes and come in for a splashdown. Anyway, this was Skullshirtigal TCG playing a fun video for you guys, a Kerbal Space Program, 3 hours in the making, 15 minutes in the watching. Thanks everyone so much for watching, and stay tuned for more.